Welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. We have just started a new series called Religion and Society, and this is the second lecture of the series. To recap, this is part of the syllabus of second semester BA program multidisciplinary, and we are following the syllabus in according to the readings that has been prescribed in the syllabus. In the first lecture, we discussed Andhra Bethe's understanding of a sociological religion as a subject of sociology. Today, we are going to look into the second reading in the syllabus, that is Peter Berger, The Sacred Canopy, where he is talking about a definition of religion. Now, in this lecture, we will particularly refer to the appendix 1 of the book The Sacred Canopy, where Berger is trying to give us a sociological definition of religion. So, in the book The Sacred Canopy, Peter Berger addresses a technical but a vital problem. How should a sociologist define religion without being biased? So, earlier in Andhra Bethe's lecture also, we were talking about value neutrality and whether it is feasible to have value neutrality in the study of religion. Here, Berger looks into the definitions of religion as provided by anthropologists and sociologists and try to argue that can we arrive at an unbiased definition of religion. He argues that the definition isn't a label. It dictates exactly what you will see in your research, and that to a large extent it could be the taste of the scholar or the researcher who is studying religion and providing us with a definition. He specifically weighs the pros and cons of substantive definition versus functional definition. So, he kind of critically examines the classical study of religion by Muller, Edward Tylor, Karl Marx, Weber, Durkheim, Luhmann, and kind of provides a critical analysis of these definitions where he identifies flaws in the definition, yet at the same time arguing that these definitions are constructive because they are adding to the sociological understanding of religion. So, Berger, religion constitutes the human establishment via linguistic and social activity of a comprehensive sacred cosmos that sustains order against existential chaos. So, when we read the work The Sacred Canopy, we try to understand that Peter Berger provides us with a social constructionist understanding of religion, where religion is part of the sacred cosmos. It is enabling us to create order and reduce the chaos in society. But before we understand Berger's approach, let us understand the flaws that he identified in the classical definition of religion. The first anthropologist that Berger points out is Edward Tylor's animism. While his view of primitive peoples, imperfect philosopher, is outdated, Tylor's definition highlights a fundamental religious drive and the desire to see the world as animated or kindred to human experience. And the second was Max Muller. So, if we compare Max Muller and Edward Tylor in terms of the flaws, but at the same time identifying the usefulness, we say Muller defined religion as a disease of language. So, this was the flaw that it was not adequately rationalized explanation of religion as a disease, but at the same time when he looks into the language, he identifies the role of language in building gods and worlds. That is, it helps us to communicate. Language is the medium through which the believer is able to establish a communication with the God or the deity or the belief, and therefore that is the important contribution of Max Muller. As we already discussed, the flaw of Edward Tylor's basis of understanding religion was that he was viewing Asian people as imperfect philosophers. However, when he kind of contributes in the way in which he says that through animism, individuals were able to kind of understand that religion is a collectivity of animated cosmos. So basically the belief in animism enables us to establish a kin relation with the unknown and the unseen. So it is establishing an animated cosmos. The third thinker that Berger looks at and identifies the flaws is Max Weber's definition. So Max Weber, in his understanding of the Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, established a relationship between religion and economy. And he was of opinion that it is religion as part of cultural system which leads to the development of economy. Now, Weber believed that the definition of religion should only be formulated after the research is finished. That is, you cannot start off with a definition, but you can only arrive at a definition once the research is complete. However, Berger criticizes Weber for two reasons. One, the payoff never comes. In the case of Weber, he was not able to complete his research as he died, and therefore the promised definition never came up. The second limitation is the practical problem. And Berger argues that we cannot study something without first defining what we are looking for, because society is so complex and everything is kind of vague. So, as a researcher, we need to first have a frame of reference to decide what data we need. So, if we are not clear in terms of the definition, in terms of the frame of reference that is required, then anything can be counted as religion, and maybe elements which are significant as for the understanding of religion can get neglected. Therefore, it is important to kind of be able to identify what actually we need to study. So, in Wittschafft and Gesellschaft, this is a work by Weber published in 1922, Weber delayed the defining of religion until after empirical analysis. But as we already discussed, the promised definition never came. However, it is not that he did not have a definition, because he did not know where to start off. So, Berger points out that Weber didn't accidentally include the nation or the household in his religious study. He is focused on things we traditionally recognize as religious. So, Weber did have a definition for that sense. He did not recognize it or acknowledge it, but as already discussed, it is not possible to do research without a definition. Here, Berger is pointing out that Weber's definition of religion was implicit, that is, it was hidden, or it was assumed based on assumptions that these are certain categories or things which are considered to be religious. So, therefore, it is an implicit definition of religion. And when we look into Durkheim's understanding of religion as a social fact, it is an explicit. So, Durkheim was categorically stating that this is religion. So, that is the difference between Weber and Durkheim that Berger is pointing out. So, he kind of looks into Weber's understanding of delaying definition of religion as fuzzy, because then the boundaries aren't transparent to the reader. When he moves to analyzing Durkheim's definition of religion and points out that while Weber avoided giving an explicit definition, Durkheim leaned into a functional one, creating two distinct paths for the sociology of religion. Durkheim defined religion not just by what its is substance, but by what it does function. So, then you have two kinds of definition of religion. One is the functional definition, where the focus is to understand the functions, and the other is the substantive definition of religion, where the focus is in terms of the content of the practice. Durkheim begins by noting that religion divides the world into the two spheres, the sacred and profane. Ultimately, Durkheim defines religion as a system that unites people into a single moral community, that is the church. To Durkheim, religion is the glue of the society. Berger noted that Durkheim is more radically sociological because he treats religion as a social fact, something that exists outside the individual, exerts pressure on them rather than just a set of personal belief. So, if we look into the comparison of that Peter Berger is providing in terms of Weber and Durkheim, we see for Weber it was kind of the definition was postponed and ultimately it never arrived at. So, but for Durkheim he was kind of very descriptive and provided a functional definition. In contrast to Weber and Durkheim, Peter Berger provides a very upfront pragmatic definition of religion. So, what type of definition did the three of them do? As we already discussed, Weber gave us an implicit, that it is hidden, it was kind of assumed. When we look into the type of definition by Durkheim, it was more explicit and he was focusing on the functionality of religion. Berger was focusing on the utility based of tolerance or the understanding of religion in terms of ordering the social cosmos. So, Weber's definition of religion has the strength is that keeps research sharp, but his assumptions are kind of problematic because his assumptions could then affect the nature of result. Weber radically reduces religion to society. So, when we go back to Durkheim's understanding of religion, we see that for Durkheim, society is God. So, he reduces religion to God, to totem, to clan. In very simple terms, he is reducing religion to society. And Berger he kind of looks into the flaws of the definitions, gives them a position and then moves forward in terms of looking into the significant contribution that each of these thinkers have done. And if we look into the sociological radicalism, Weber was moderate. He was kind of using the interpretative sociology, and therefore his objective was to have an interpretative understanding of the relation between politics, economy and religion. For Durkheim, the sociological radicalism is that he wanted to provide us a completely scientific understanding of religion and therefore considered religion as the social fact. Berger combines the two and therefore he gives us a balanced constructionism. Now, from after looking into the functional definition of Durkheim, he moves to Luckmann, who redefines or adds on to the functional definition of religion by Durkheim, and Berger admits that functional definition like Durkheim or Luckmann are tempting because they are unambiguously sociological. They allow a researcher to ignore the specific content of beliefs, gods, spirits, rituals, and focus entirely on how a system operates within a society. This makes for a cleaner analysis because the sociologist doesn't have to get bogged down in theology. They only need to look at social cohesion and meaning making. So then we'll kind of his discussion moves to Luckmann. And he tells us that for Luckmann, religion was a self-transcendence. In the work The Invisible Religion, Berger considers it as the ultimate evolution of the functionalist tradition. Luckmann moves beyond Durkheim by rooting religion in anthropology rather than just social fact. Luckmann defines religion as a human capacity to transcend biological nature. According to Luckmann, humans build universe of meanings that are objective and morally binding. By stepping into these meanings, we cease to be mere animals driven by instinct and become human. So, Luckmann sees the functional role of religion in terms of making human beings more social, creating a normative existence, having a set of legitimate behavior, moral order, and that is through the religion that is kind of enabling human beings to move away from the animal natural instinct to a more social and cultural life. So, under this definition by Luckman, everything uniquely is human, everything human is religious. Language, morality, and social roles are all religious because they help us transcend our animal selves. Berger sets up a crucial distinction here. If we follow Luckman, the scope of religion becomes so broad that it covers almost all of human culture. So, here if we look into the two debate between the substantive versus the functional debate, we see that functional basically here the focus is now on Luckman. What it does is the focus. What does religion do? And as we already discussed, according to Luckman, religion helps to transcendence and meaning making. So, it is helping us to learn the moral order, the norms of the society. And what is the scope of the functional definition? It is universal. So, it is everything which is cultural is religious, and the same set of understanding can be applied to every society. So, even secular ideologies, nationalism and language to that extent becomes religious. The risk involved in such an understanding of religion is that it becomes too broad to distinguish religion from culture in general. So, if we follow Luckman's definition of religion, then the two terms of religion versus culture gets blurred. It becomes one or the same. Then we come to the substantive Berger's choice, which is the definition that he kind of follows. The focus is in what it is, that is, believe in a supernatural or as a sacred order. So, if we move from a primitive society where it was the belief of the supernatural, today to the belief of sacred order, and the scope is specific, limited to phenomena involving God or other worldly forces. The risk in Berger's substantive definition is that it can be criticized as Western centric or too narrow. So, it could be only specific to one particular culture where, so it is a culture where it would be considering supernatural as religious or certain object as sacred. It cannot then be applied to other society with the same understanding of religion. So, if you look into the substantive definition, what religion is, it focuses on the content of the belief. Usually, this means the belief in supernatural being, God, or transcendent reality. What is the pro? It matches what most people actually mean when they say religion. It keeps the category distinct from other things like football or communism. The con? It can be narrow. It might exclude religion that don't have a clear God figure, like some form of original Buddhism. So, then it could not be included in the study of religion, or more modern secular movement that act like religion. On the other side, we have the functional definition, and here, as we already understood, the focus is what religion does. So, a functional definition defines religion by the role it plays in human life, specifically its ability to provide meaning and protect us from anomie. The pro is that it is very broad. It allows a sociologist to study things like the American way of life or Marxism as a religious phenomena, because they provide a sacred canopy of meaning for the people. However, there are certain cons or the disadvantage, and that is, Berger warns that if everything that provides meaning is religion, then nothing is specifically religion. The term becomes so thin it loses its analytical edge. So, why did Berger then have a more positive choice for the substantive approach? So, it is Berger argues in the appendix that sociologists should favor a substantive definition. He believes we must maintain the distinction between the human world and the sacred or the transcendent world. If we don't, we lose the ability to study secularization. So, if you define religion as anything that provides meaning, then secularization, or if we understood as a loss of religious meaning, can never actually happen, because humans will always find meaning in something. So, Berger's primary objective to Luckman's functionalist definition is one of practicality. If religion is defined as any act of self-transcendence, the ability to step outside one's animal instinct and create meaning, then nearly every human activity becomes religious. So, the whole act of preferring to eat, say, pizza over the chapati could also be an act of transcendence. So, every social act would then become religious. So, there could be no categorically difference between your everyday activity, your cultural aspect, and religion per se. So, Berger points out that if we call modern science a religion, we haven't actually solved anything. We would immediately have to invent a new word to describe the difference between a laboratory and a cathedral. Using a definition that equates religion with the being human period, Berger makes the term religion lose its specific meaning. It becomes a synonym for culture or society. Berger decides that for his research to be clear, he must define religion by its content, what it is, rather than just its function, what it does. He argues we should define religion first and then study its anthropological root and social functions as separate questions. Berger's substantive definition famously centers on sacred, a quality of mysterious and awesome power that it believed to reside in certain objects, places, or beings, setting them apart from the mundane world. Peter Berger provides his definitive answer to the problem of definition. He settles on a substantive definition that relies on a specific recognizable category, the sacred. By grounding his work in the sacred cosmos, Berger distinguishes his approach from the broader functionalist view of scholars like Luckmann or Durkheim. Berger's substantive definition famously kind of centers on the quality of being mysterious and awesome. So, we then come to the idea that the whole core definition of religion by Berger is the sacred cosmos. He defines religion as the audacious attempt to conceive of the entire universe as being humanly significant. Specifically, it is the posting of a sacred cosmos. Drawing on the theological Rudolf Otto, Berger views the sacred as a quality of mysterious and awesome power, which he terms as the mysterium tremendum, that is believed to reside in certain objects, place, or being. Religion doesn't just provide few rules, it provides a cosmos, a total meaningful order that stands in opposition to the chaos of the world without meaning. Berger notes a subtle but important technical problem in Luckmann's work. Luckmann treats the sacred and the religious as basically the same thing. If the sacred is just another word for human meaning, we lose the ability to distinguish between a scientific theory, a meaningful cosmos, and a religious worldview, which is a sacred cosmos. Berger calls his path conservative because it sticks to traditional boundaries. It allows for less complicated distinction between different types of worldview that we find in history. So, Berger admits that while he believes his definition is more useful for his specific research, definitions are ultimately matters of taste. That is, that how you look into the study a religion or how you define it will also be kind of based on the individual biography, the taste of the scholar. Berger emphasized that choosing a different definition that Luckmann doesn't mean they disagree on the fact. So, it is not kind of completely critiquing the definition and throwing the baby with the bathwater. It is just kind of trying to understand that these definitions are contextual and it holds meaning as for when understood in the context of time and space when the research was done. So, both Berger and Luckmann would agree on how society is constructed. They simply choose different tools or definitions to describe the religious part of the construction. So, if we look into the Berger's logical claim, we see the step. The goal was to study how religious provides the sacred canon for human being. The tool was a substantive definition if focusing on the content of the sacred. The distinction: religion is not just meaning, it's meaning linked to supernatural or sacred world. And the utility: this prevents the study of religion from dissolving into a general study of culture or science. So, with this, we come to the conclusion that religion is ultimate nomos. It takes on whom our human made laws and social order and projects them onto the entire universe. Isn't just social order, it is the social order that claims to be rooted in the very fabric of the universe or the cosmos. This allows Berger to track how modern society is moving away from specific cosmic ground into a purely human secular grounding. So, this is the first appendix where Berger is giving us the sociological definition of religion. So, for reference, it is the end at page 175 of the book The Sacred Canopy, Elements of a Sociological Theory of Religion, published by Doubleday, and this was published in 1967. So, we refer to appendix 1 of the book. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.